Imagine having the strength of a beast, its ferocity in battle, its ability to hunt, its ability to fight and protect those dearest, its ability to overcome enemies so dangerous that human and elf tremble, but also its capacity to turn, its capacity to hunger, to lust, an enslaved soul to forever hunt and kill. This is the life of a werewolf. So knowing all that can go right and all that can go wrong, would you do it? Would you willingly accept Hircine's gift of lycanthropy? Is becoming a werewolf worth it? What is up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Scott and welcome back to FudgeMuppet for another awesome hypothetical discussion about the magical universe of the Elder Scrolls that we have come to love. Now, like our previous Vampire Worth It video, we won't be discussing the gameplay aspects as such. Well, actually, if you really want a quick answer, in the game of Skyrim, being a werewolf is definitely worthwhile, as you basically have no drawbacks, a powerful beast form, and disease immunity. But that isn't what we're talking about. We are posing the question, if you actually lived in Tamriel, would you become a werewolf willingly, if you were given the choice? So we will be diving into the lore to extract all the benefits and ramifications that come of this choice, and we may have to look at gameplay functions to narrow down the abilities and how it works precisely. I'm also not going to dive into the other were creatures in this video just for simplicity's sake, also the fact we don't know as much about these exotic were creatures, but regardless, how about we start with how werewolves came about and their relation to Hircine, the Daedric Prince of the Hunt. So unlike vampires, werewolves and lycanthropy in general can't be traced to a single patient zero, a catalyst for the disease or blessing, depending on how you look at it. All that is known is that this condition is of Daedric origin, created by the Daedric Prince of the Hunt, Hircine. He often bestows this blessing upon devotees, members of his cults, and skilled hunters. Hircine seems to maintain active contact with many lycanthropes, bestowing gifts and powers upon proven, exceptional werebeasts. Among packs of lycanthropes, he has even been summoned to determine who the pack leader should be. So unlike Molag Bal and his vampires, who just was sort of trolling the god Arkay, Hircine actually seems to care in his own way about his creations. One of the ways he does this is giving them eternal life in his hunting grounds after death to be able to hunt eternally, which for those who willingly received the lycanthropy, this is a pretty sweet deal. Take Aela the Huntress for example, but for those who regret taking the blessing or who are perhaps unwilling victims of the curse, it may not be so good, especially because it robs you of your desired afterlife, be that a cultural heaven like Sovngarde or perhaps the realm of some other worshipped god, who knows. All we do know is that if you are a lycanthrope, your soul will be claimed by Hircine, whether you like it or not. Now, before we leave the topic of unwilling victims, how does one become a lycanthrope while unwilling? Well, many times people willingly accept lycanthropy and are ready to become a powerful were creature, but even if one does not want the curse, they can still be infected by claw or teeth wound from a lycanthrope. Usually when tooth or claw meets the flesh of someone, they don't live to tell the tale, but in the cases where they have survived, they often become infected and turn into a werebeast of the same type. Ingesting a were creature's blood is another way to rapidly transform yourself into a were creature, and there are even said to be rare cases of families where the condition is actually hereditary, but for the most part, you either need to be infected or directly cursed / blessed by the big man Hircine himself. So now we know all that, we understand who it comes from and how to get it, what does it actually do? Well, lycanthropy mainly gives the user the ability to shift into a beast form, part humanoid, part beast. So, werebear is part bear, wereshark, part shark, you get the gist. But of course today we are solely focusing on the werewolf and whether or not it is worth becoming one in the world of the Elder Scrolls. And yes, obviously a werewolf is part humanoid, part wolf. Beast forms are powerful and bloodthirsty, with the consumption of flesh extending the beastly frenzy. Werewolves, as seen in Skyrim, can toss enemies with a flick of their wrist, gnash and claw people to bits, maul their chest cavities, and pop off their heads with raw strength alone. Being a werewolf gives you undeniable strength, ferocity, and speed in battle unmatched by one in the form of elf or man. Their claws are even said to be enchanted, as they manage to strike enemies that could not be harmed by conventional weaponry, and considering the Daedric origin of the transformation, it makes sense. There are prices to this power, however, and that price is usually insatiable bloodlust and even potentially amnesia occurring after the events of the werebeast carnage prior. But cases with lycanthropy seem so random and varied. Some lycanthropes are forced into transformation monthly, some daily, sometimes at the moon, sometimes not at all, as is the case with the werewolves of the Companion Circle in Skyrim, who seem to have complete control over when they transform. The conditions of their bloodlust also seem to vary, some feeling it while in human form, some who feel peckish and aggressive as a werewolf versus some who are borderline feral and unrelenting in their insatiable hunger for blood. Some, though, again have complete control over their lycanthropy, and it is said that Hircine can grant this to devout followers. One of his relics in particular, the aptly named Ring of Hircine, grants the user complete control over their lycanthropy, but without the ring or some sort of Hircine blessing, you have no idea what kind of werewolf you would be. A crazy feral one or one with complete control, perhaps somewhere in the middle. This is a risk you have to take and something you need to deeply consider when asking the question, being a werewolf in the Elder Scrolls universe, is it worth it? The final effects of lycanthropy to mention are some of the miscellaneous ones that occur even in human form, including the immunity to all diseases, erratic sleep patterns, and sometimes even small bestial features that remain, such as scents and patches of fur. You will have to put up with every guard for the rest of your life asking you that question, is that fur coming out of your ears? But if you can handle that, then you're sweet. So on paper, just the powers and abilities alone, without the conditions accounted for, it seems like a pretty sweet deal. If we assume the best case scenario, meaning you have sufficient willpower to control your bloodlust and you have control over your transformations, as if that's not the best thing ever. You have this beast form allowing you to at will transform into a werewolf, granting you super strength, speed, agility, stamina, as well as a hulking figure with claws and gnashing blades for teeth, making you one of the most powerful creatures to walk Tamriel. You also remain 100% immune to any and all diseases. However, you may have to put up with some restless nights and some odd patches of fur that don't seem to fade away. But overall, that sounds like a pretty sweet deal. If I were to join the Companions and their particular strain of lycanthropy was offered to me, I would take it in a heartbeat, and hunting in Hircine's realm could be pretty fun, so I wouldn't mind if my life after death was just hunting in Hircine's hunting grounds. So yes, being a werewolf is 100% worth it to me if that is the case. However, if you could not control the transformation times, for example, every full moon or every 3 days or whatever random transformation cycle you are locked into, it becomes a different story. I think just for the fun of it, I would still become a werewolf, even if I had to transform, say, once a month. I would just prepare ahead for it, go for a trek into the woods, and just hash it out until it's over, and assuming I can still additionally transform willingly, that's a pretty sweet deal. The big thing for me that turns the worth it into a not worth it is when I can no longer control myself within the transformation. If I had uncontrollable bloodlust and just went into a frenzy killing everyone around indiscriminately, I would be shattered. Imagine if that happened around your family, friends, or just your town, killing innocents. It sounds flat out horrible and I wouldn't like it in the slightest. I would be able to handle a condition where you feel a bit angry, a bit hungry, a little more aggressive, hangry perhaps. I could deal with that in the werewolf form, but not a total loss of control like a feral beast. If I were to guess, many of you would be on the same page as me. If you could willingly transform and control the lycanthropy totally, then of course it's worth it. And I personally still think it's worth it even with a few uncontrolled transformations, because you could learn when they happen and account for them. Like I said, by isolating yourself. I could also deal with minor bloodlust and aggression, but not so much that I can't control it. But the thing that sucks is that you just can't know what kind of werewolf you would be. I imagine it could also vary. One day you're perfectly fine, but then another day you just snap and tear apart a little girl like Sinding in Falkreath. Also, you have to consider that there will be people hunting you. People aren't big fans of were creatures, and with good reason, considering their wild and unpredictable natures. Organizations like the Silver Hand and the Vigilance of Stendarr will be after your blood, as well as many other organizations like them across Tamriel. So what is my verdict? Do I think being a werewolf is worth it? Yes, in the ideal scenario where I can control all of it, then of course. But what if the question was, would you become a lycanthrope if there was a risk of you becoming feral or possessing random transformation cycles? What then? In that case, I have to actually say a hard no. If it was the ideal scenario, the only real trade-off is some shitty sleep and certain groups won't be too fond of you. But if you get that shit card handed to you where you become a bloodthirsty beast killing all around you and you aren't able to control the transformations, and on top of that, you have groups like the Silverhand hunting you, and with good reason, considering you're a rabid beast a lot of the time, well, that isn't a life worth living, in my opinion. So in that case, I would have to say no. I would not want to risk it. How about you guys? What do you think? Would you risk it? Do you even think being a werewolf is worth it in the first place, even under the ideal circumstances? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this discussion, give the video a like. These are my favorite kind of videos to create, and I would love to hear some suggestions down in the comments below, or you can head over to Twitter, links in the description where you can find us and talk to us there. My name is Scott from FudgeMuppet. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will be back to nerd out with you again next time.